it has been described as one of the most remarkable UFO sightings in history. April 23, 2007. Captain Ray Bowyer was flying a routine passenger flight for a civilian airline company from Southampton on the coast of England to Alderney, a small island off the coast of France. A senior pilot for 18 years, the 45-minute flight is a route Captain Bowyer had flown thousands of times. Flight 544 departed at 2 p.m. with 9 passengers on board. Conditions were fine with good visibility for miles around. Captain Bowyer rose to an altitude of 4,000 feet or 1,200 metres and was cruising on autopilot about 16 kilometres or 10 miles south of the Isle of Wight. Captain Bowyer was doing paperwork and looking out for other aircraft when he noticed what appeared to be a brilliant yellow lamp or light. At first, he thought it might be an aeroplane or reflections from the ground or sun, but what he saw was no light reflection. He first spotted the object from a distance of 88 kilometres or 55 miles. For 15 minutes, the captain, as well as his passengers, witnessed the unidentified object. With his 10 times magnification binoculars, he could make out that it bore no relation to a normal aeroplane. He concluded that it was not a reflection, but an emission of light. With his binoculars, he could make out a definite shape, but as the plane flew closer, a second object came into view.
Both objects were of a flattened disc shape with a dark area to the right. They were brilliant yellow with light emanating from within, and I estimated them to be up to possibly a mile across.
1 mile or 1.6 kilometres across. Simply put, they were enormous. But Ray wasn't the only one to spot the UFOs. His passengers did too.
Hello, 544, zone plus message.
Traffic, not really say how far, but by 12 o'clock level. Roger, I've got a very bright object, well, it wouldn't say how far, extremely bright, yellow-orange object, straight ahead, very flat platform. We're looking at it through binoculars as we speak.
Hello, 544, Roger, I do have a primary contact now, very faint primary contact, just to the left, approximately 11 o'clock this time, in a range of about 4 trap miles.
Roger. I've got a definite contact by 12 o'clock, very bright yellow object looking, well, like a cigar.
Jersey Bladder 832, the zone asked us to look if we could see an object which is being seen by A-Line at the moment. We've got something about 8 o'clock resembling the description.
Roger, and 832, Roger, what range would you estimate that target?
Around about the similar range to Alderney from us now.
Well, looking through binoculars as I am now, there's a second one just appeared behind the first one from where I am. Roger, 544, just confirming that all the passengers can see this aircraft. I've got the island visual, it's dead ahead, can't say how far, probably 5 miles, but it's staying the same size. Looks to be off the north-northwest coast of Alderney.
A-line 544, Roger, would you like to send?
Please, I better go down, I think.
A-line 544, Roger, descend to altitude 2,000 feet, the QNH is 1021.
2,000 feet, 1021. It's very plain to see from where I am now, without any binoculars.
Were you scared?
I wasn't too happy, put it that way. I was quite glad to get on the ground and have a cup of tea.
We flew to Guernsey, an island off the northwest coast of France, to get some first-hand testimony where the sighting took place. Here, we met with Captain Ray Bowyer and 2 of his passengers.
We're travelling back from Southampton to Alderney in a Trailander. I had noticed Ray looking out through the windscreen with his binoculars, which is quite unusual.
I saw Ray turn around and talk to someone behind him while we were flying. Now, it wasn't worrying from the standpoint of flying, but it was unusual. And he was gesturing to something down below.
On nearing the object, a second identical shape appeared beyond the first. Both objects were of a flattened disc shape with a dark area to the right. They were brilliant yellow with light emanating from within, and I estimated them to be up to possibly a mile across.
I pointed it out to John. He had to lean across me to be able to see it.
It was like that.
This was a big object in the sky, very, very big object. And I didn't want to be too close to it. So it was at that time anyway where we had to descend to land. And with both objects still visible and to a lot of the passengers in the back of the aircraft, we descended through the 2,000-foot haze layer and lost sight of it.
A man with more than 20 years flying experience under his wing, so to speak, saw something extraordinary which later made those headlines as he flew at 4,000 feet near Guernsey. And so did quite a few of his passengers, and so did the pilot of another aircraft that was flying nearby, flying over Sark. And Captain Bowyer is here now to tell his story. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for speaking up, because I know from private conversations I've had over the years with the commercial pilots, sometimes when I'm up in the cockpit with them, they do see things, and they tend not to report them because they don't want to be laughed at or have their careers jeopardised.
Exactly right,
so why have you decided to speak out about it?
Well, I didn't actually decide to speak out at all. Actually, the press asked the company, which I work for, to would I mind doing an interview, and the company, being quite a forward-thinking firm, had no objection. In fact, pretty much actively encouraged it. So that's how it happened, really.
Well, how did the press get hold of it then? Did passengers?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You weren't the only person who saw this phenomenon,
that's right.
were you? There were some passengers who saw it, and
Yeah.
also another pilot.
Yes.
Simultaneously. Well, look, we've got an artist's impression that we knocked up here this afternoon on our computer paint box. Is that kind of what you saw? Is that a reasonable...
No.
Oh, well, which is the best we did.
Oh, be honest, yeah.
Well, hold that picture.
Well, it's pretty good.
You describe it to us.
Well, it was a brilliant yellow object. The brightness you've got there, about 2/3 from left to right, it was a graphite grey section, if you want to call it a fuselage. We don't know yet what it was. We're looking into it.
And how big was it?
It's difficult to say once again, but I saw it from 50 miles away. So any object from 50 miles away must have been fairly enormous.
Well, what, about a mile long?
It's possible, yeah.
Did it move at all?
It probably didn't move, but I had the great opportunity the other day from Jersey Air Traffic Control, visiting their radar room, and some interesting traces, let's put it that way, from the radar
Really?
indicate that there's a possibility that they did pick up on, from both Guernsey and Jersey radar, traces, spurious traces they call, for around about 55 minutes.
How long did you see it for?
I saw it in total for 12 minutes.
Can I show you a picture? This is, I'm sure you've seen this picture. It's of lenticular clouds, a very rare but known formation. This was taken some years ago. Could it have been something like that? Could it have been some very, very strangely formed cloud, do you think?
No. Well, I think highly unlikely. I've seen lots of lenticularis in my time, but just doesn't look like a cloud.
Well,
really.
you've seen a lot of clouds over the last
I also had
years.
the opportunity of looking at this, or these objects, there were two of them, through binoculars, 10 times magnification, and in my view, a very definite object inside controlled airspace, which shouldn't have been there.
What happened? Did you simply lose contact with it? Did it disappear?
Well, I was landing. It was a general flight from Southampton going to Alderney, and the only reason I lost sight of it was because I descended through a haze layer, which is fairly common in that area. And having descended through the haze layer, couldn't see it anymore. But it's almost certainly still there.
Did the other pilot who was flying over Sark, the island of Sark, did he report it in exactly the same terms?
Yes, because it was sighted, or they were sighted inside controlled airspace. The pilot's under a legal obligation, and I suspect this is where the press
stories come from.
And he's filed a report exactly the same as I have.
Well, let's show you a couple of pictures from the UFO file books. These are genuine UFOs in the sense that no one's ever been able to explain what they are, but they happen. They're not fakes.
Well, that's
over New Mexico.
That's very similar to the sort of thing that I saw. Yeah,
well, and
my passengers.
That was famously
I haven't seen
taken over New Mexico in 1957, and it's not a cloud. That much we do know. I don't know what it is, but it's not a cloud.
Not a cloud. Analysis showed that it wasn't a cloud, but they don't know what it was, hence UFO. This is one from Russia in 1989. Again, analysis shows it's a genuine object. It's not a cloud. There is a cloud above it, a faint one, but that object is not a cloud. Again, is that something
well, I'd say the object I saw was a very brilliant yellow
much brighter
colour.
than that.
Yeah, much brighter. It's emitting light.
Good. It was emitting. You think it was emitting?
So. Well, there was cloud above it and all the way down to Guernsey. And,
so it couldn't have been reflecting sunlight.
Yeah.
Well, that was what I first thought before I looked at it through the binoculars. That there's a lot of vineries called greenhouses in Guernsey, and the sun may have been reflecting from one of these vineries to the aircraft. You often see them in France as well on the way down to the Channel Islands, and because the aircraft moves position and the reflections are fixed in place, they often disappear. They always disappear. This one didn't disappear; it just stayed stationary.
If you had to take an instinctive guess, and I'm saying it's guess, so I'm not asking for professionals, because how could you possibly know? Would you say that it was something of this planet or something from outer space?
Extremely difficult. I mean, I think a few years ago you interviewed Dr. David Clark on a very similar sort of thing.
Did, yeah.
About 4 years ago. I spoke to him today. He's in charge of a team that's looking into this at the moment. I have been asked a question by the press, and my simple answer was, I don't think it's from around here. Okay. I can't speculate any further than that. But there is some information which is now being looked at, and hopefully better come back one day and give you an answer to this. But at the moment, it's an unknown.
When you fly now, I mean, do you have a sort of slightly heightened awareness of what may be going on around you?
I think, yes, definitely. Yeah, it's not the first object I've seen personally, and I've spoken to a lot of other commercial pilots since this has happened, and they've said on the quiet, come round the corner, I want to tell you about what I saw.
Absolutely,
and I think what's going to happen now, this may have opened the can, and I think what all professional pilots out there ought to be looking at is actually reporting everything they see and actually getting it itemised and written into the CAA, and then perhaps we will find.
Well, I have to say the unofficial first-hand accounts I've, as I say, had from professional pilots, many of them with as much experience as you have, and they're not putting me on, are extraordinary. Some things that some guys have seen. Some see nothing in an entire career. We interviewed a British Airways pilot who also came out in the 1960s. He saw a silver disc, didn't he? He picked it up on his radar. It was picked up on ground radar over the Bay of Biscay. Pretty big, and it travelled at immense speed, way faster than the speed of sound, and disappeared under his right wing. And it was a round silver disc, like they're supposed to be. Extraordinary.
Well, this object looked like a CD disc on edge, if you like, but very sharp and extremely well defined.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and describing it to us. That's fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Why didn't you bring this to the attention of your passengers? I mean, normally when a pilot sees something of interest, he says, if you look out to your left, you'll see...
Yeah, New York. It was a little bit far away from you. Well, it was... I didn't want to alarm anybody at that point. There again, as we got closer to these objects, there was no hiding it. They were just there.
Bowyer reported the bizarre sighting as soon as he landed. It is one of the most immediate and thorough UFO reports ever filed, and includes drawings of what he says he saw that day. Captain Ray Bowyer is a serious pilot and a serious man, who says reporting his sighting was imperative. The thought of being dismissed or laughed at did not even cross his mind.
I did not feel that I was in any danger of being ridiculed, because all I did was report what actually happened, as was my duty as operating aircrew.
The captain urged his peers to always report any unidentified object they see.
I would urge all fellow aircrew to report whatever they see as soon as possible, and to stand up and be counted. It's only when crucial and critical witnesses such as aircrew make reports that the authorities will be kick-started into a broader investigation of this phenomena.